I'm about ready to debunk your little fucking Tammy Jo Alexander fucking headline news. Okay? Because it's all a hoax. I'm going to give you two backdrops of information. Number one, the United States, regardless if they want to stand up and recognize, the birth of a new nation and all that bullshit under God, they were required at one time to prove that they could stand as a country, be counted as a country, operate as a country like other countries do, okay? They had to prove it, that they had the knowledge, the skills, and the wisdom to do such a thing, to even be considered a leader amongst others. And if you go back to the League, if you can find any writings on the League, you will see that what I'm saying is very true. Okay? There's no way that a group of people from opposite shores just shows up on some shores someday and says, we're going to create a new country and, carve it out for ourselves. They had to go back and ask multiple leaders, how do you do, how do you do, and how do you do? Because they didn't have the knowledge, okay? So that's a first thing. That's a first backdrop on what I'm about to say to debunk this bullshit with Tammy Jo Alexander, which it is fucking bullshit, okay? It's a made-up fucking hoax of a fucking story. The other thing is, there's no fucking way in hell, if we had a solid system of caring people, would anybody have to go through the shit that I've been through? Okay, me and my kids. Somebody would have stepped in with heavy-weighted shoes and said, this is a fucking enough. Look at the shit you're doing to these people. We don't have that here in the United States because there's no intelligence. They're operating from infantile mindsets, okay? They have no wisdom whatsoever. They're fucking playing fucking games with other people's lives for monetary laundering of tax dollars. And that's all the fuck they do, okay? That's the shit they do. They don't fucking care. They don't step out in their jobs and say, using their conscience as a guide. They don't say, well, if I fuck up this person's life by making this mistake on the job, how would I feel if somebody did the same thing to me or one of my kids? They don't say shit like that to themselves. They have no fucking conscience. They're not ethical. They're totally immoral. They're fucking, they should be tested on any lines of sound reasoning for what they fucking do, okay? This thing with Tammy Jo Alexander came about in 2013, okay? That was 34 years after the alleged incident occurred, and I had already lived in Livingston County for about 25 years of that 34 years. And not once did I ever hear about this story. Never. And they didn't bring it up in the news, in their little penny savers, or any of that fucking shit. Nobody ever talked about it. I never even fucking knew about it until it fucking hit the news in 2013. Now, here's the most interesting thing I find about all this shit, is that this girl in 2013 she's in the accounting field, she says. I'll put links in my description. Check out the links. You'll understand what I'm saying if you don't understand my words. 2013, she's, in the accounting field, she gets laid off from her job or let go from her job, okay? She says she starts looking at old pictures and she starts to ask questions like, well, whatever happened to this girl? Okay. And then she goes and has a conversation with one of her male classmates, and, they start looking for this girl that they went to school with. Up until that point, this girl that supposedly they went to school with, they didn't give two fucking shits where she was in life. They didn't care about her. Okay? So out of the blue, she comes up with this fucking idea. Okay? That she's going to contact NAMIS, which is the National Missing Persons Database, and establish a report. And they said, well, we can't help you without a police report. So then she goes to the police. This is a school classmate, okay, that hadn't seen, cared, or heard about this girl in over 30 years. And so then Nama says, no, we're not going to open up a case for you. You don't even have a police report. So she goes and she actually gets a police report for missing persons in 2013, okay? Then they open up this missing persons report and then put it in there in NAMIS. You can't pull it up in NAMIS. I wasn't able to the other day when I tried to. It's probably out there, but maybe under solved cases. So then this web sleuth guy gets a hold of it, and he starts making a correlation to unidentified people, and somehow they end up oddly in Livingston County, New York. It's a fucking hoax, okay? The whole fucking thing's a hoax. She's the one furnishing all these pictures that then later come out in the news, okay, of her friend. And then she's the one telling the story about how she found the obituary of the alleged mother, Barbara Jenkins, who had passed away, in reference that she had a deceased daughter by the name of Tammy Jo Alexander. She also makes reference that she knows the father, Joe Alexander, okay? And then she finds the sister, Dyson, I think her name is, or must be, it's like Dyson. And from there, they do a DNA test using the sister, which I think she's a half sister, whatever, okay? And they get a match. They don't tell you how accurate the match is, but they just, it's a match. And then from that point forward, she actually becomes identified on January 26, 2015, right before the total collapse of my life and my children's lives, okay? In Livingston County, New York. So, and by the way, I was in the accounting field too. I spent many, many years obtaining my knowledge and my education and my certification for accounting, okay? Which, again, the whole thing is such a crock of shit. So then it goes viral. They finally identify this girl. They just need the killer, okay? And it's all a fucking crock of shit. It's all it is. Because there's no real intelligence from a investigator standpoint of view or any other type of examiner of facts versus fiction that would take wholeheartedly the information passed by this school classmate, okay? And so there's things you have to understand about life. One is anything that they collect and gather as evidence behind their doors All you have to do is look at their paperwork. If you can find one mistake in the paperwork of a employee or a person employed by the government, you have to automatically assume there's other mistakes being made. And so DNA is portable. It's a mobile type uh, analysis. You can take the DNA of a live person, walking, breathing, walking around, slip that DNA into a case file to come up with a match for someone that's deceased. And there's nothing that prohibits a person employed by the government from fucking with files, okay? There's nothing, and you're never gonna know who's fucking with what, because there's no body of, there's nobody auditing any of their fucking shit, okay? So DNA, including evidence. If I can pick up a pop can and put my fingerprints on it and throw it out my car window, not that I would because that's littering, and I wouldn't advise doing that, then that's proof in itself that evidence is portable, okay? I can put my first prints on the can, sitting here in my car, sipping away, toss the can out, going down the road, and it will end up just about any place, okay? That's why you can't always rely on evidence. The only evidence that would be, I would say, strongly held evidence would be if you found somebody's fingerprints on a structure that hadn't been moved for a long, long time. And you knew that, the last time it was moved was, 10 years ago, and the incident occurred within the past fucking year, okay? But all that other shit, including DNA, it's all portable. You can take the DNA from a live person, because they haven't established timelines on DNA from a corpse to a live person. They, they can tell you that from the decomposition of a body roughly how long they think that person had been deceased. But when you pull DNA, they have no way to determine if it's coming from a live person or a dead person when they make their determination. Okay? So somebody could have easily, like Patty DeBC. I don't like you, Patty. I don't like you because you robbed me and my children of a life. Okay? And you got away with it. They could take Patty DeBC's DNA. She's walking around spending all kinds of money that she never had to fucking work for. Living it all high on the fucking hog, okay? They can take her DNA. They can pass it to one of her husband's friends who works for Livingston County. They can slip it into the file. And then they can match it up to her sister or her closest relative, Dyson, to come up with a match. You see what I'm saying? It's so easy. It's so easy to fucking put yourself out there under a different light. Now, here's the really odd shit about all that stuff, aside from this Laurel Nowell, the little accountant that lost her job and had nothing better to do than started researching after 34 years and created the missing person case that led to the identity in 2015 of Tammy Jo Alexander. Here's all the other shit. She doesn't provide her findings, which is, okay, where's the obituary? Where's your classmate's birth certificate? which you could have requested, or you could have had NamUs request that for you, to show, in fact, that there was a Tammy Jo Alexander that was born on this day in Atlanta, Georgia, I think it was. And her mother's name was Barbara Jenkins, and her father's name was Joe Alexander. That's not out there, so that's lacking in proof and in evidence. She, whenever you use the nicknames, the shortened version of a name, that always raises a question. So was his name Joe Alexander or Joseph Alexander? And if you look at Find a Grave or Find Grave, you're going to find that there's probably about 833 Joseph Alexanders out there. And if you whittle it down, let's focus in on Florida, there's 47 Joseph Alexanders with a grave in Florida, and there's 17 Joe Alexanders with a grave in Florida. And when we're talking about Barbara Jenkins, there's about 580 graves with the name Barbara Jenkins. But the odd thing is, there's only one grave, other than the grave that she brought to the surface in Livingston County, now buried in Dansville, New York, that bears the name of Tammy Jo Alexander, and that is a grave in Mississippi for an infant that died in 1964. Excuse me. The other odd thing is, nobody talks about, I didn't even know about, until I started looking at all this shit that they did to me and my kids, and it all goes back to the same fucking rotten, sick, twisted place, okay? I never knew it, I used to read the newspapers I used to hold all my newspapers, and that was my Sunday thing. I read the Wall Street Journal, the DNC. I sat from the time I woke up with my cup of tea and my toast at my kitchen table for half the day just reading fucking newspapers. And never once did I ever see anything about this Suzanne Pitcher that also allegedly died in Caledonia, New York. Now, the weird thing about Suzanne Pitcher, that they say is from Rochester, New York, is that there is actually under Find Grave, Find a Grave, Find Grave, a Suzanne Pitcher up in Lawrence County, New York, with the same date of birth and same date of death. So why didn't you bury her in Livingston County? And why didn't you blow her up to the press? Because it's almost like they make shit up to put themselves out there. I would most definitely have drawn this Laurel Nowell right the fuck in, and I would start saying, 34 years have passed, and you didn't bother to look for her in all those years, and all of a sudden you're so interested in her. Is it possible that you scalped the name off of an infant's grave from Mississippi? Otherwise, where are your yearbook photos or any other official type photos to prove that that was really a name down in Georgia or Florida? And where's the birth certificate? I mean, if you got a missing person, the first fucking thing you ought to do is get the fucking birth certificate on record. That's your number one lead right there. That whole fucking thing is a hoax. In the similarity in looks, even at an older age, between the photos that this Lauren Nowell provided. Again, photos are mobile. They're portable. There's nothing to say that somebody from the Rochester, New York area didn't have a friend down in Florida or Georgia and sent those pictures down, or maybe she lived there at some point in time, and they're holding on to some pictures, or hey, by the way, you know let's make up some shit and have some fun before we die, type of shit. But the resemblance of the pictures provided by this Laurel Nowell and the crux of my life. I have a few cruxes, but this bitch needs to fucking go, okay? She needs to be put in her fucking place. That's what she needs. She needs to be put in her fucking place. The similarities are just too similar. Skin color, hair color, the facial structure in itself, the V shape of her neck. Too fucking similar to the photos provided by Laurel Nowell. Okay? So it sounds more like it's a game. One way or another, I'm going to make you famous. Then we just have to focus on making you rich. Okay? That type of shit. She's a crux in my life because she was married. She entered into my life and in my home. She took things out of my home and out of my life that she had no right to do. She took my personal property into the backyard of my own home and burnt my personal property up in front of my children on a visitation, but she was still married to her husband when she did all that shit. And there was nothing, according to the local police, that I could do because he invited her in. So she had the right to walk into my house, pick up a piece of jewelry that was given to me as a gift by my mother or something, and walk right the fuck out with it. And there was nothing I could do. She had the right to show up in a courtroom that on a case involving my son and boo-hoo cry in the back room as if it was her son that they were talking about, making, her fucking Hollywood scene in the back room while she was still married to her husband with her 3 children, and nobody said anything to her. She had the right to interfere in all matters involving me and my children. She had the right to enter my home and take whatever the fuck she wanted to. I would not doubt it very much if she did stuff to my dogs. And there's nothing I could do about it because there's no laws that prohibit sick, twisted, meddling, home-wrecking bitches from doing what they do. She should have been fucking arrested because she was committing adultery, and adultery in the state of New York is a punishable crime by 1 year in jail, but she never got fucking punished. But we did. And so I got a big problem with this bitch. And while she ended up with my bed that I bought because I was in a car accident, and she got to walk through my house like it was a fucking, store, like a mall, and she got to hand select all my things that she later carried on with through her life, I ended up with nothing. And I'm the one that served in the fucking military, not her. And not one stitch of law protects me or my kids, but they're protecting her. And so I got a big problem with her and what was allowed to transpire, where she was allowed to gain access to my identity, step into my shoes, and become me overnight. In all these years, it's going on 19 years, I have not shared a Christmas with my kids or my grandkids. I have not sat across a table for Thanksgiving. My kids don't share Mother's Day with me or my grandchildren because she assumed those positions that were rightfully my positions. And prior to her entrance into my home and in my life, I had a very, very extremely close bond with my children. And she fucked us up. And there's no laws or even any type of society acknowledgement that this shit goes on and it's allowed to go on. So, as far as Tammy Jo Alexander, I don't even think there's a fucking corpse buried there. And if there is, they probably plucked it out of the Doherty fucking funeral home and made, to add to the fucking crux of their fucking storyline. I'm pretty sure the pictures supplied by Laurel Nowell are Patty Ann Kalansky DeBC Truax. It's too fucking similar, okay? Making her famous. Now they just have to focus on making her rich, that type of fucking thing. Not once did she send me a sympathy card on this alleged incident with my son. She got all the sympathies, as if she gave birth and raised my son. And the incident happened less than 2 miles from her home. As a matter of fact, none of those people, the Truaxes, none of them, not one fucking one of them, by mail, by phone, or even by Facebook, passed any type of sympathies my way. As a matter of fact, I got fucking laid down by a lot of people right after that happened. People cut me down left, right, and sideways. Because it was a fucking another game they played. So, the United States is the biggest hoax, evident of the people and the societies in which we have to roam. It's a fucking hoax. All of it is. There's no checks and balances. There's no quality checks built into anything. Look at the links in my description. You can call me crazy all you want, but I sure the fuck didn't get laid off and start looking at my classmates and wonder what the fuck happened to some girl and then make up some fucking story that became headline news at the expense of taxpayers.